Thank you very much. I hope you will be able to stay with us. And I'd like to invite our esteemed panelists to join us. You sit here. Sit here. Mina? So welcome to the second part of this effort to join three separate side events. Our side event is titled Blue Carbon, the Potential of Coastal Vegetated Ecosystems in Responding to the Climate and Biodiversity Crisis. My name is Ioli Christopoulou. I'm from the Green Tank, and it is a great pleasure to be co-organizing this side event together with Dr. Eugenia Apostolaki from the Hellenic Center for Marine Research, Dr. Ioannis Sempos from the National Technical University of Athens, Professor Ioannis Karakasis from the University of Crete, and Dr. Vassiliki Tsaousi from the Greek Biotope Wetland Center. Before introducing our panelists, I'd like to ask Eugenia very quickly to tell us why this event.
Thank you, Ioli. Welcome to this event. So we must accelerate our action against the climate crisis. And coastal vegetated ecosystems have attracted significant attention after the ingenious conception of blue carbon concept towards contributing in achieving carbon neutrality, provided, of course, that there will be a synchronous, ambitious cut in emissions. However, these ecosystems are under pressure from various factors, including climate change, that jeopardizes their climate regulation service and the very many other benefits they provide to nature and the people.
That was fast. Good for you. And tell us maybe why now?
So why now? Because Europe lacks in developing a roadmap for including blue carbon ecosystems in its climate strategies. Greece is a coastal nation hosting vast amounts of these ecosystems, and it also has a new climate law that provisions on the mitigation potential of all natural carbon sinks is taken into account by 2030. In addition, Greece was the first EU member state that have adopted legally binding 2030 nature conservation and restoration targets that gives the country the opportunity to couple the assessment of biodiversity crisis with the climate one to avoid degradation, emissions from the degradation of these ecosystems and enhance further storage. However, there are several challenges in including blue carbon in the climate actions. So, with this event, we are aiming to shed some light in the scientific, technical, and policy aspects around the topic. And, well, let's see how much we can achieve in this short time slot. I was very fast.
Thank you very much, Eugenia. This is, winning the records here. So it's a great pleasure, though, to welcome our esteemed panelists. They traveled to join us here. Professor Carlos Duerte from the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia. KAUST, thank you very much for being here. Dr. Mina Epps, Global Head of Ocean for IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Dr. Rosa Maria Roman Cuesta from the European Commission's Joint Research Center. And Dr. Petros Varelidis, Secretary General here in Greece of the Ministry of Environment and Energy, responsible for the natural environment and waters. Thank you all for being here. The two remainders are the surprise further in our discussion. Carlos, I start with you. You're one of the top experts on our topic. So let's start with the med. Our knowledge is growing, and we are understanding a little bit more what is happening, but there are significant gaps. So my question is, how will we identify the potential for carbon storage of these coastal ecosystems here in the Med, or maybe globally? What can we learn from other regions? That's my first question to you.
Well, thank you, Ioli, and thank you, Eugenia, for the invitation, the Hellenic Center for Marine Research. I'll try to be as effective as you've been in keeping to time, but blue carbon is now a mature strategy and a reality. And every 3 years or so, since we released the report called blue carbon, the role of healthy oceans in binding carbon, which is where the concept and the name was coined, then we've seen the investment on blue carbon projects grow up by about a factor of 10 every three years. So now it has reached about tens of billions of investments. It's already reached a scale, and the science has moved along, and we have now the capacity to deliver high quality and effective blue carbon programs globally. So I'm very inspired by the announcement made yesterday, I believe, from your Prime Minister of investment of 2.3 billion on conservation and restoration of Posidonia in the Mediterranean. That is the main carbon sequestration ecosystem in your habitat. So really the boundaries of blue carbon is that when we coined the name is the role of healthy oceans in binding carbon. So this is not limited to the shoreline. And now the edges of science are in how can we activate also climate benefits by better managing not only coastal habitats, but also continental shelves, recovering the abundance of large marine animals that keep the ocean productive, like whales and others, and also resolve the difficulty of how to track carbon sequestration from kelp and seaweed. So that's where the edge starts, but in unlocking that potential, we can really grow blue carbon beyond its current boundaries that are described in one of the slides.
Thank you. So it's a global challenge, and we need the knowledge to grow. You already mentioned the financing, and we come back to it. Maybe we also need, as somebody famously said, institutions matter, so we need also the institutions. And my question is to you, Mina. Are the institutions that we have to date sufficient to integrate the blue carbon potential, to understand the challenges? Are they sufficient, or maybe we need to adjust them? So maybe you can provide some insights on this.
Thank you very much. Really pleasure to be here with the fellow panelists. So, well, IUCN, as you know, is an intergovernmental organization, but also having members. And together with our members and partners, we've really been working in the blue carbon, getting the science to policy to get it into the framework. And I think we can actually celebrate some of the success. And also what Carlos was alluding to is that we've come a long way. It's now matured. But still, in the policy context, we only have 3 marine and coastal ecosystems that you can account for. So we have our mangroves, seagrasses, and marshes. And we also need to think about, the emerging blue carbon ecosystems, of course. But I think what we actually have done is also to look what are the different entry points where you can align and integrate the policies. So if you look at, you have the UNFCCC, which you mentioned, the 3 ecosystems that there are, the scientific guidance, etc. We then have the SDGs, of course, but also the Ramsar Convention on wetlands. It's actually one of the oldest conventions, also hosted in Switzerland. And also, last but not least, we have the Convention on Biological Diversity. And within that, you have ad hoc working groups specifically working on this. So we need to have a better alignment on that, and both in terms of everything from capacity building, how do you report, and all this. And I know we're out of time, so I'll stop and maybe I can...
No, I think it's important to keep in mind that institutions matter, but also institutions evolve. So maybe the Ramsar Convention was adopted in 1971, but still now it's relevant and can help in addressing and including also these provisions. So thank you very much for your comment. Rosa, I come to you to go up in a little different aspect of this topic, because we are talking about how we have identified the blue carbon potential of these ecosystems, the marine ecosystems, but you have been working mostly on monitoring and reporting greenhouse gas emissions and the removals. So maybe you can tell us a little bit from your experience from the land sector and whatever experience you have from the marine sector, how can we include blue carbon in the national inventories?
Thanks very much, and thank you everyone for being here at lunchtime, and pleasure to be with my fellow panelists. So blue carbon offers opportunities because of the high productivity of mangroves, seagrasses, and salt marshes. And for Europe, considering overseas territories, the 3 ecosystems should be considered into the national greenhouse gas inventories. This is an amazing opportunity to start completing the accountability of the countries with these highly productive systems, particularly because it will force to develop an MRV system, like a monitoring system, that then it can be used for reporting on all the other commitments on biodiversity, on water quality, and so on. So that having the incorporation of the blue carbon ecosystems into the greenhouse gas inventories is beneficial for all other requirements of reporting for countries. The thing is that at the global level, and unlike project level carbon initiatives within voluntary carbon markets or national carbon markets, reporting at the national level has a few challenges. And we only have right now 2 countries reporting them into the greenhouse gas inventories, which is the US and Australia. Recently, Papua New Guinea, Liberia have also incorporated that, but that is a very small amount of countries having them as their greenhouse gas inventories. Within their mitigation commitments, they are more present in more NDC countries. Some of the challenges. The first is the scale. So if you want to report on the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory, you need to think at national scale. And also, you need to incorporate the boundaries of the ocean that you are going to include as managed land. And managed land is a very important concept within the greenhouse gas inventory. So you can only report what you monitor. And in the case of these ecosystems, you have to consider the ranges of the tides, so tidal range. This is not an issue in Europe, but it's certainly an issue out of Europe. So you have to have a system to monitor where are the ranges of your tides. And then for subaquatic systems like seagrasses, you have to define the depth, because you have to have this consistently determined for your entire country. So if you're going to measure 30-meter meadows of seagrasses, you have to do that consistently for the entire country. That means that you need to think about what are the boundaries of your system when defining this national inclusion of the greenhouse gas inventory.
Rosa, maybe you can give us just the next one, very brief title, because I was just informed that we will have to cut short.
Okay.
So
the second challenge, and that's also very important, is that the potential of blue carbons, it's on the stocks, on the mat. And they are highly productive, but what we really need to measure is the changes on stock. And that makes it quite challenging in terms of monitoring, especially for aquatic systems like seagrasses. That also comes with the topic of this event, that because what you want to do is preserve the stocks, so avoid fluxes with the stocks conservation is much more important than restoration. So the focus of incorporating it should be on conservation. Sorry.
Thank you. I come to you, Secretary General Petros, we heard already that Greece has evolved in its institutional framework with 2 significant laws in the past years, the National Climate Law and the law integrating nature conservation and restoration targets. Is this new policy framework sufficient to include blue carbon for Greece?
Well, certainly this is the objective. So one of the main restoration actions is supposed to be planting actually Posidonia. So I think that's a top priority for us, and we have the legal framework to do that. Of course, that's not enough. We need also the economic means. We have the NECA organization that will support us on that with public money. But the idea is that we're going to attract also private funding on this because it's a good publicity. So it brings money back. And at the same time, we're trying to build a carbon credit system so that, we get a price for that type of projects. We don't know the price because it's going to be, a free market instrument, but hopefully that will also add more money to it.
Thank you very much, and also for being very concise but very clear on the potential for Greece. I understand from Ioannis Sempos from the National Technical University of Athens, but who is also responsible for emissions reporting of Greece, that there are still some challenges on how do we report on this. So maybe you can say just very briefly on these challenges.
Yes, thank you, Ioli, and it's a privilege to be among these esteemed colleagues and experts. My question builds on recent research conducted by Dr. Apostolaki. According to this research, which highlights the significant potential of carbon storage in seagrass meadows in South Aegean, with an estimated accumulation around 68,000 tons per year. So given this substantial contribution and considering that Greece currently does not include blue carbon contribution under the national inventory, I would like to raise a question to my colleague Rosa. So, Dr. Roman Cuesta, from your experience what lessons can we extract from other countries that have already included blue carbon in the emission inventories under UNFCCC?
Thanks. Very briefly. So the two countries that have major expertise are the US and Australia. They're both reporting mangroves and salt marshes. They have worked with seagrasses, but they are not reporting them yet. So I think the first lesson is don't prevent the perfect, be an obstacle for the good. So the greenhouse gas inventory have tier reporting. Start with tier 1, which is very basic. The only thing you need to do is mapping changes in area and use standardized emission factors. And then move ahead towards modeling that is very adjusted to your conditions in your country. So start with simple approaches with these greenhouse gas inventories. That would be my brief response.
Thank you, and very insightful one too. So as we conclude, as you understand, we have to rush, but I cannot not ask Carlos this question. We are talking about the potential for blue carbon ecosystems, but the ecosystems are in threat, a very serious threat. So in Europe, at least, we are discussing about the new EU nature restoration law. Is this the opportunity that we have in order to address both crises at the same time?
Yes, that's a very important topic because there's a risk in carbon-centric approach to miss what's really the value of restoring nature. So it's not just about carbon, it's about natural capital, which supports many other functions than just carbon removal. Coastal protection, Posidonia is essential, and also food security among others. So now the UNFCCC and the CBD are converging finally with the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework goals that mandate for active restoration. So the first time that we have a regenerative framework, not just conservation, regenerative, and that's fundamentally important because in this conference I see a sentiment that the whole goal is 30 by 30, so if we protect 30% of the ocean, the job is done. But in fact, for corals, we already have 46% protected, for seagrass more than 30%, and yet we see that they are at risk. So that we need to go beyond conservation, we need to engage in active restoration, and we need to see the whole value of the restoration practice, not just carbon, and develop a new asset, which is natural capital, which is the asset that we should be focused on, not just carbon.
Thank you. Thank you. So we need conservation, but we also need additional restoration efforts. And some are taking place already in Greece. So Sophia, very briefly, if you could just outline a few of the initiatives that have taken place, while you're also viewing some of the projects in place on your screens.
Thank you, Ioli. Yes, concerning habitat loss, local case studies conducted in several areas in Greece indicate the decline of coastal blue carbon ecosystems. The main causes are land use changes, eutrophication, chemical pollution, sea warming, etc. We still do not know the trajectory of change in these habitats across the whole country. However, hopefully, during the forthcoming round of marine strategy implementation in Greece, we'll have more information. Concerning restoration, there are several ongoing restoration projects in Greece. Overall, replanting the lost plants is considered a plausible option for active restoration actions. However, it may not be sustainable if without addressing the local pressures, anthropogenic pressures affecting these ecosystems. Therefore, there is an urgent need for comprehensive strategies that not only address the damage, but also mitigate ongoing vulnerabilities of these ecosystems.
Thank you, Sophia. And Mina, to you, the penultimate question. We still have one more for the Secretary General, but we spoke about policy before. Could you give us 2 words of guidance on how also to secure the finance for the blue carbon projects?
Yeah, excellent. And also referring to your Posidonia example, I believe that the fundraising target for that is 50 million. I want to say that, we need doing good project. It really takes time. It takes time, resources, human resources. We are currently having, and this is based on government funding, so actually from the government of Australia, we have a blue carbon accelerator fund. And really what it is that it's a kind of a readiness support to get ready to actually invade. And we have to follow very high quality blue carbon principles that we have developed. So going through all of those principles, but one of them is really to involve the indigenous and local communities, but also the local policy and stakeholders, and that takes time. And then we have the implementation support. So there are funding available. I mean, we need to look at different mechanisms, and of course, that comes back to the main problem that most of these projects are not cannot sustain themselves from the revenue of blue carbon alone, and the pricing is too low. So we need to think about this multiple benefit. Like Carlos was mentioning, we're now seeing that the emerging blue carbon ecosystem entering the policy space is not only, it's not just for mitigation purposes, it talks about other climate benefits in terms of resilience. So I will stop there. Of course, restoration is not cheap, so we also got to protect from the start. But thanks.
No, thanks a lot. So we need sustainable financing that will bring benefits to nature, to the climate, and the people. So thanks a lot. And my final question to the Secretary General, you just alluded to this new market that Greece is developing right now, designing on carbon removals, especially from the forest sector. I understand from your previous statement that you see potential in including also blue carbon in this market eventually. If you could just comment briefly on that.
Yes, exactly. That was the meaning. It's not going to be only forest. Maybe we will start from forest, and we will start from wherever we have better data and more robust, indices in order to make sure that what we say it is absorbed, it is indeed absorbed. But at the same time, we have already a study on how this planting of Posidonia could be carried out. And we are also now trying to finalize the way that we're going to measure how much CO2 is absorbed and for how long we need to monitor in order to keep track of it and ensure that whatever project is in place works in the long run. And of course, at the same time, as you very well know, we have the special ecological studies that will tell us what to do with the existing Posidonia areas and how to preserve them from anchoring of yachts. And of course, we announced that we are banning from 2026 bottom trawling, that of course it is illegal to be done in Posidonia areas and in the first 1.5 miles and in less than 50 meters. But still, I have a strong suspicion that banning really bottom trawling would make a huge difference in the field.
Thank you very much. And we have to conclude this illuminating discussion. I hope, even though it was short, we could say that there is potential in the coastal blue carbon ecosystems. And from what I heard, there is willingness and even an additional potential, not only to sequester the carbon, but also to sequester all these great minds that are working together, both for the climate and for biodiversity. So I end the session being very hopeful and having more knowledge. Our time is over, I'm afraid, but a round of applause for our fantastic panel. Thank you for being able to adjust so much, and thanks to all of you for being here. Enjoy the rest of the day.